Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Jesse with the Shuffle Bus. We are getting ready to play the top cut of the AIL. This is my round one top cut. I'm playing against Inquisitor 0684. I believe this is the first time playing Inquisitor. But obviously, to get to this stage of the tournament, a high caliber player, somebody that will really be a strong competitor, and ultimately somebody that will put up a fight. I played Odette in my week 7 Swiss because I wanted to try to work on some additional Phoenixborns. Unfortunately, I ultimately felt like the deck wasn't quite ready for tournament play after my match with Carl, and I felt the need to go back to sort of the tried and true Herald list that we've been running all tournament, with a couple of exceptions. One, I added a Crimson Bomber into this list, specifically in case somebody has been watching videos and decides to tech against me with a wide strategy, in which Herald certainly can do. It also added a Hammer Knight, and also to sort of deal with wide strategies that alert unit can block, plus counter attack into another unit and ping another unit with Aftershock. So it just gave me a lot of flexibility there. I believe I checked my opponent's first conjuration count, see a big conjuration pile. Makes me think that I probably need to be playing that. You also see I added 2 Nature's Wraths to the list. Because I don't play a ton of little guys, and Salamander Monk being one of them, I felt like Nature's Wrath was a pretty reasonable exchange in this list. And then, if it is on a marked target, it's still 2 damage to that marked target. So I felt like that was pretty good. I do include the Salamander Monk because if I Nature's Wrath, and I have exhausted Salamander Monks, it's sort of a cheeky play. But if not, then I still get to keep a unit on the board, which I felt was a reasonable exchange in the matchup. So my first 5, I end up with Crimson Bomber, Frostback Bear, and Salamander Monk. I believe I think through my last choice here just a little bit, because we dropped the Flash Archer, Freezing Blast for these cards, because with Hydra being agreed upon to stay out of the mix, it seemed okay to be able to do that. We just go ahead and add the River Skald, and really, it's unlikely that I'll play the Skald in a super optimal way here, but I can still just draw a card off the Skald, and when you look at my dice spread, I will still now have, in this particular spread, 2 nature dice remaining and 3 sympathy dice remaining, assuming I don't use Frostbite round 1. If I use Frostbite round 1, I have 1 nature die and 3 sympathy, and there's a lot of cards in this deck that will do that. I think in hindsight, one of the things that I would like to say about this deck is it would probably just benefit from having Raptor Herders in the list, just because it's such an efficient unit, even if it's not a big unit. You just have the battlefield space for it, and if you can manage to put together Salamander Monk Raptor Herder, then you're really in a pretty good place to be able to trigger the group tactics off of the herder, off of the hatchling. So I do think that Raptor Herder would be a better first 5 choice if I had it in the list than River Skald, but I didn't, and just learning more about the game as I play it, the more I start to like the efficiency of Raptor Herder as a single dice unit. It's probably one of the best allies in the game. I think Skald's also an extremely good ally, but just one of those things. So we're in a Herald Mirror. My opponent has 4 Sympathy, 3 Ceremonial, and 3 Divine. Makes me think we're going to see some Lightbringers. It makes me think that we're probably going to see some potential Fallen shenanigans with a wide battlefield. It's very possible that this could turn into that. And, it's definitely a trick if that happens. So we'll sort of see what he comes out of the gate with and go from there. But with a big conjuration count like I'm planning, if I can go first, or second, I want to go second because I don't want to give him top of round swinging if he's able to flood the field with a bunch of units. So kind of the thought process, Sleeping Widows with 3 dice are very possible, and something that we'll have to deal with. Just thinking through some of those things. And obviously Guilt Link is very powerful in his list if he's got Guilt Link with a bunch of weenies, because he can sacrifice something less meaningful to take care of my largest threat. So probably if that's the way this game starts to go, it probably does tip the advantage or the favor into my opponent's side, just in the mirror, because it sort of reduces the value of my mark on his units, but it still maintains the value of his mark on my units, since I have big units in the deck like Frostback Bear and Master Vampires and Hammer Knights. So we'll see how that all plays out in the game, but it's certainly something of concern when we talk about the outcomes of this particular tournament. So I think we're getting ready to get started. We're shuffling up now finally. Going to roll some dice. Okay. So nothing too outstanding out of my roll. We got, we got a bunch of basics. We did get 1 nature power, 1 sympathy power. But it does put us in an awkward place because we've got a lot of meditating to do to be able to put our hand together. We can play the bear and cast a bear, no problem. But everything else in our hand, well, we can play the Salamander Monk as well, but everything else in our hand is going to require meditation. Like we have to meditate at least 1 more sympathy die. We have to meditate one more ceremonial die to be able to play the Crimson Bomber. So all of those things equate to problems when you start to talk about maybe a long, grindy game, if that comes down to it, which sometimes mirrors can be. So opponent rolls, quite a few different dice here, but he meditates 3 off the top. It makes me feel more comfortable about having to meditate 3, that he meditates 3. He goes with ceremonial power, sympathy power. Couple of things that I'm thinking there is, number 1, ceremonial power. He's going to try to recur the vampire and cast the vampire because he's got the dice to do it. And that might be a problem depending on how late in the round it happens. So we'll just kind of see how things go here, but we let him go first. Again, thinking that he would be Swarm. Can't tell what book that is that he brings down. I apologize. Sometimes watching these on playback and I don't remember exactly what that card is. I think that's the Lightbringer. But I go ahead and play Frostbite. It's a cheap unit, like, for him to put out, and I lose Skald, Fester, and Vampire off of the Meditate. That's actually a pretty good hit in this deck where you can recur, and I don't have a ton of sort of ceremonial things that I'm doing, so the ceremonial are really here for some of the recursion and then just some of the odds and ends pieces of the deck, like the vampires, so and the Hammer Knights. So feel pretty good overall with that, putting 2 allies in the bin. I mean, it's 1 life, but to get them back, there's the Guilt Link. I think Lightbringer Guilt Link is very strong. So we go ahead and play a Salamander Monk, and the reason I do that is because, number 1, if I cast Salamander Monk and any Lightbringers will force me to attack, he takes the 1 and turns on the Guilt Link. All he can do is then use Guilt Link to kill a Salamander Monk, which gives me value. He responds with his own Salamander Monk book. That is problematic. The Bomber and the Skald are bad for me to put out right now with Guilt Links and sort of the plan. So we go ahead and drop the first Salamander Monk onto the battlefield. This way, again, if he Lightbringers me, I get value out of it, even if we do turn on the Guilt Link. He's got to remove 2 units to make Guilt Link powerful for both Skald and Bomber. It sort of opens the door for Skald to get played here after the lightbringer, but he goes ahead and plays his own Salamander Monk. And I think that's okay. I mean, we're sort of doing the very same things. My Guilt Link is very similar to my Frostbite is very similar to his Guilt Link in this scenario. So I go ahead and just buy some time and play the Frostback Bear book. Again, I don't think my deck is surprising anybody at this point because it's been played so often that any opponent that has scouted me, and top players will do that, will know exactly where we're at. But I go ahead and kill the monk and make a spirit. I want him to have to think about if I bring a bear out and he lightbringers me and I attack into his face and turn on Guilt Link, I want him to think about like, well, he can't just make a free unit now. He's got to kill one of his board pieces, whether that's the lightbringer or the monk. So that's the thought process. We're on 2 and 2 apiece on cards. He's still got a lot of recursion availability left. But I can still play bear here and go from there. Still got a mark on tap just in case he plays a big unit, which is something that we sort of want to be thinking about. And so now it really comes down to like, what is the correct use of my 2 units remaining? Again, if he drops Lightbringer, I attack with the monk, turn on the Guilt Link, and then allow him to use the Guilt Link. It's killing something off of his board, and I think that's kind of the point with why I nature power the Salamander Monk Spirit. But it's tough. It's going to be a tricky matchup no matter what. So he's going to attack into my Salamander Monk. And I can't decide if I want to counter here or let Herald tank the hit. And I let Herald tank the hit. Maybe that's incorrect. Maybe the correct play is to go ahead and let the counter happen and just make a Monk Spirit and be done with it. But I play the bear. The reason I play the bear is because even if he plays Lightbringer, I can just attack for bear for 2, and I still have the Salamander Monk up. That's the thought process I have. And then, we can still play Crimson Bomber this turn and still play River Skald this turn. And I feel like we're in a pretty good place coming out of that. Let's see what he drops here. Drops his own River Skald. Draws a card. Discards Grave Knight to do 3 to the bear. Okay. So, he's going to get to recur the Grave Knight. I think he's just telegraphing it, brings the Grave Knight back, takes 1 point of damage. I like this play with Ceremonial and River Skald because you just get... You don't get the flash archer play, but you get a flashy unit that you can put back into your hand. And like here, I could go ahead and meditate 1, recur, recur the bigger thing. But I make a nature power. I think I'm thinking that I can turn on Frostbite with the nature power here. And that's possibly okay. Most likely I should just make my own Skald and shoot a Skald with a bomber. And we just make a bomber. So the issue with the bomber is, we're gonna pass. See, that's the issue with making a bomber here, is that the Skald can just attack into the bomber, and because the Herald soaked up the 1 point of damage from the other monk instead of just letting my monk counter, it creates a problem. Anchornaut is decent here. We do 1 point of damage to his Skald. That allows us on next turn to, it forces him to use his Skald this turn. And so we can counter with the Salamander Monk, or he can attack Skald to Skald, which is what he's going to do here. That's the best use of Skald, is attack my Skald. Since I don't have a Uniguard unit up, he can just go right at Skald and, do his thing. So I mean, at the end of the day, I think probably the best thing to do there would have been to hold the Anchornaut, throw the bomber, and kill the Skald. And I still have Skald and Monk up. And then next turn, I can play the Anchornaut to kill his Salamander Monk Spirit. Or if he plays a Lightbringer, kill the Lightbringer and just attack face for 3 damage. But see, instead, we're just going to trade Skald and Skald. And I just wasted the Skald ability on the Anchornaut. So that's sort of a misplay on my part. Knowing and looking back at the game, I think this is somewhat of the turning point for me because he's still 2 cards in hand and 5 dice to now 1 card and 3. And the ability for him to still play Grave Knight, and I don't have a great answer to the Grave Knight. Although, I mean, you could argue that Salamander Monk could be an answer to it as a forced counter. Crimson Bomber can kill it, which trading 2 dice for 3 is okay. Technically, my opponent spent 4 to play this Grave Knight because of the stuff. But I go and attack with the Monk because I want to force him to. I don't want to show the Bomber yet. I want him to play his Grave Knight and then show the Bomber. But again, if I'd have just done this differently, I could have thrown the Bomber at the Skald, still played the Anchornaut, still pinged the Grave Knight, and then had the Salamander Monk to attack the Knight instead. And that might have just been better overall, especially considering we can still mark the Knight when he plays it. So, I would have been really, really close to finishing, my opponent off here. And I could probably still recur the Vampire in my bin for next round. He's meditating. Yeah, I think he's just going to try to pump the Vampire up, but he's threatening a Meteor as his last card. The issue with the way he's got Meteor threatened now like that is that he would kill his own Grave Knight to do that, and I think that's probably not going to be super great. So I don't expect much to happen here, but we're going to mark the Knight. And then we're going to say go. So again, if this was, instead of this, if this was an Anchornaut, there'd be 2 damage on that Knight already, and I've got the nature die up to kill the Knight as it sits. So again, this is an example of where the Bomber would have been better just trading, because I still have a Skald up right now as well. And so we would have just had Exhaust the Salamander, an Anchornaut, and a Skald instead of the Crimson Bomber. But yeah, I mean, It's a minor difference that has major implications because I can't attack the Grave Knight because his Herald hasn't defended yet. So it's one of those things where when you think about potential outcomes on how you can deal with things, Anchornaut here was probably a better play versus pitch to the River Skald. But again, we didn't do that, so we're paying the price for it in a sort of a spiraling out of control kind of way. I think we're going to come out of round 1 relatively unscathed. If he plays Meteor here, and I don't know if that's what he's thinking about, but the Meteor, even if he casts just regular Meteor, because he's got to spend at least 1 power die on it now, he's going to kill his Knight for sure, right? So even if he were to meditate down here to just do 1 to everything, he's still going to lose the Knight, and I'm going to have a standing Bomber and a standing Monk to attack for 4 damage into him. So, and then we're going to go top around where I'd get to do the same thing again, just to swing for another 4, so we'd have him down around 6. So I think it's just a really bad play now to play into Meteor as we sit on this board right now. So he's going to attack. His best play is to attack Grave Knight. And so I just counter with the Bomber because I can't defend the Grave Knight attack. And so that does kill him, but I do take 1 point of damage from the overkill. And I just ping for 1. Leave my Salamander up. Again, Salamander sort of works in a way of turning off the meteor. So, okay, so he's going to play Lightbringer. Make a 1/1. Put a Divine Die on it and attack for 2 on the next turn. Yep. So I just take 2 here. The issue now is that, again, we just never got to that place where we pass main. I think that, like, part of me likes to leave the Lightbringers up, right? And the reason why is there's only 2 of them, so like as we go into round 2, he can only cast Lightbringer 1 more time, and then we're in a position where he doesn't have much choice. So I think this is a point in time where, we can make a bear and attack with a bear. We've got Ice Trap and now River Skald. Like, we can make a River Skald here and pitch the Hammer Knight, but we don't need to pitch the Hammer Knight for anything big, right? So, like, what are we trying to kill? It's kind of awkward, and so I think the best play is just make another Salamander Monk out of the gate here and put that unit onto the battlefield, and then try to attack with both Salamander Monks, trade some damage, and then Nature's Wrath. But I think the best thing to do here is make a Salamander Monk, and I'm just going to attack, and I think that's also a play mistake. I think this is where I sort of get too zeroed in on my opponent's getting wider than me, and I got to try to get the Hammer Knight out, and I'm not going to be able to do that. And so, it is what it is. But this just opens the window now for my opponent to attack me for 2. So I just did 1 to take 2. That's just bad. Whereas if I'd have just played another Salamander Monk, I think my opponent would have played another Salamander Monk. I can then attack with my 2 Salamander Monks. My opponent will take 2, and I'll take 3. But then I can Nature's Wrath the board away. And I would have 2 spirits in play to his 1 spirit. And so we would flip the sort of quote-unquote proverbial script on these things. So we're going to see what he plays here. I'm going to meditate. Just want to be able to get the Hammer Knight on board. We lose a Molten Gold. That's a big deal, I think, when we're talking about Herald and Consume Soul and the ability for him to regain life. Like, we need ways to be doing more than 1 or 2 damage a turn, and Molten Gold's a really way to do that. But fortunately, we're going to turn on a Frostbite, but we're going to take 3 here off of Divine Powers, right? So, like, this is a pretty big counter swing, and now it's less incentive for me to play Nature's Wrath right now. So we summon a Salamander Monk, which is or a Frostback Bear? No, a Salamander Monk. See, and I think we just did this out of order, right? So, like, if I'd have just played Salamander Monk and said go, like, my opponent couldn't have just dinged me for 3, right? Like, we'd have been sitting here like this. I think he's going to play a Salamander Monk here, maybe, but he might be playing something different. Oh yeah, I remember what this play is. This play is going to be a huge blowout for me. Like, it's going to be really costly to my game. So single Ceremonial die. There's only a handful of things that single Ceremonial dies are good for, but Fire Archer, and it's not this play, it's the next one, I'm sorry. So at this point, I think the best thing I could do, like, if I attack with Salamander Monk into Herald, I do 1, take him to 11. Nature's Wrath have 2 units up to his 0 units up, and he can still play a Lightbringer. He can still play another Salamander Monk. So it's really not looking great for me in so many ways. But I think we want to ultimately we should probably want to Ice Trap the Salamander Monk is what we should be holding the Ice Trap for. So we attack directly into the PB for 1. We meditate a nature die up, lose a Consume Soul, which we could really use here in this game, especially when we're about to drop a bunch of units, and we could have killed a unit with Frostback Bear, or Frostbite and get value back. Now, I think the Consume Soul only works off of attacks, if I remember correctly. So we go to 7 here. Yeah, so I think now our real only chance to do anything is we should Nature's Wrath here, but it's really less good. So we're going to play the Hammer Knight because the Hammer Knight can afford to take a little bit of damage. That way, if my opponent goes ahead and plays a big unit, we can try to mark it and go from there. And the Aftershock would sort of be able to take out some of his other things on the battlefield, like the Fire Archer, or if he plays, another Hammer Knight, whatever. I think we got to put a Bear down as well in this exchange, and we still have Bear to cast. And I think, summon-wise, I think we have better summons than he has. I mean, like, Salamander Monk and those things don't do much. Salamander Monk and Lightbringer aren't super powerful against Bear. Like, we can just put Bear down for advantage. Hammer Knight's good here because it threatens, like, with the alert and some of those things. So we'll see what he does, but I think I know what the play is if I remember right. It's in this round that he does it, and it's sort of the end of the game for me at that point. Yep, I'm pretty sure this is it. I thought it was it last turn, but I think it's this turn. Yeah, he chokes the Herald. That's a big deal because it prevents me from being able to mark if he plays a big unit. And that's really troubling because now he's still got the Ceremonial die. He can't play a Grave Knight again. So I'm not sure what the big unit would be exactly. But, it could be a number of things still. Like, he still has battlefield room. So, I mean, there could be a Emperor Lion book here. There could be a variety of different things that could be really problematic for me in his dice spreads. Now, he can't play the Emperor Lion without meditation, but here he is meditating, right? So, he's going to meditate 3. Final Cry, Consume Soul. I think that's a Summon Lightbringer, second Lightbringer book. I'm happy to see the second Lightbringer book go. Although, again, we're trying to keep Lightbringers up. So now he's threatening Meteor, right? 3-point Meteor. To me, this is where I have to take a Hammer Knight and attack. I don't know if I do. Yeah, see, play the Frostbite, and I think that's a mistake, right? Like, Hammer Knight has to be aggressive here, do 3 damage to my opponent, and then let him play something else off of that. He can't play the Lightbringer if he Meteors here, and I think that's significant. But like, Hammer Knight should have just hit for 3, taking him to 8, and then we could take him to 6 just off of Frostbite pings this round. We still have the Ice Trap to stop playing of the Salamander Monk. So what's he drop here? He drops a Lightbringer. Wants to force the attack. And this is a mistake. The Ice Trap doesn't... I think I got in my mind that Ice Trap would stop the need for me to have to attack, but the Lightbringer still comes into play. So to me, Ice Trapping the Lightbringer is really doesn't matter. Like, I can just take the Hammer Knight, attack into the Lightbringer, Aftershock the Salamander Monk Spirit, and then if he brings out another Salamander Monk, like, just go ahead and then Nature's Wrath and do that. I still have a River Skald in hand that's playable, and I still have a Bear to play, right? So I still have 4 more damage on the board. But now I'm just going to attack for 3. He's going to mark the Hammer Knight, which just means that it can't be defended. So to me, this is where I have to attack with the Bear, and I screw up, and I play a Nature's Wrath, and I actually let him know I'm playing Nature's Wrath. So now it's like, I can't do that because of the Lightbringer, right? So So now, like, I can't even sneak the Lightbringer in, so I just have to attack for 3. I can't sneak the Nature's Wrath in, so he's never going to play Salamander on me now, which I think he would have probably been playing Salamander at this stage. But instead, he's got a different plan, and I think that, knowing that I didn't have... knowing that I have the Nature's Wrath makes a big deal in that exchange. So there's the Sonic Swordsman. Okay, so... I think, well, at this point, I don't think the Nature's Wrath matters. I guess it brings up 2 monks, but this is just a mistake also. Like, I should just do the Skald and, put a Skald into play instead of, like, instead of what we have here, which is... his swordsman's just able to kill the Hammer Knight and then exhaust Salamander Monk. And, I mean, what do I have left is a Skald with no other cards in hand and a Bear. So I can play those things, but now I can't use Frostbite, right? So, like, it's a situation where Nature's Wrath really didn't do much for me other than open up my opponent's board and still now allow him to play Salamander Monk. So I should have just waited. It was not necessary there. I could have played Skald and then my opponent would still probably attack into the Hammer Knight and I can't defend it, but then I can turn around and beat up on the swordsman with my little guys and the River Skald and still make a Frostback Bear and get in for 2 more points of damage. Still have a Nature's Wrath, and if I didn't want a Nature's Wrath, I could have pitched the Nature's Wrath, and then Skald could have killed the swordsman. So, again, hindsight on these things is how you learn, and I certainly think that this game was winnable for me, but as soon as he choked me, and I didn't have the foresight to understand that Nature's Wrath at that point, I was just so fixated on trying to get my Salamanders off of the board that I played Nature's Wrath just way too early. I think it should have been the last card in hand, and I should have played Bear, and I should have played River Skald. Let those things take a little bit of damage, particularly when my opponent doesn't have much of a board, and it wouldn't have mattered. But, again, hindsight is what it is, and we have a couple of different ways to deal damage, like the frostbites are worth 2, so I could just go ahead and summon a Bear here. He healed 1 off of the swordsman, but I don't know how he did that. I don't remember. I don't know how that happened, but again, if we're sitting on Skald on board, opponent attacks swordsman into Hammer Knight. Again, I didn't see what he played to heal 1 off of the swordsman. But that's okay. Gonna make a Salamander Monk. And see, this is where still having Nature's Wrath would have been powerful to keep my opponent's board really low going into the top of 3 where he gets to go first. Because the Nature's Wrath would have done the same thing. So now I play River Skald and I draw a card. Okay, and this is a mistake as well. I choose to use the Consume Soul to ping the Salamander Monk, I think. And in theory, I should hold the Consume Soul. Yeah, there should be 2. Yeah, there's 2 now. There's 3. Again, the reason why I think this was a mistake overall was because what I should have done is held the Consume Soul, still had Nature's Wrath in hand, or pitched the Nature's Wrath earlier to the Skald, my first Skald, or to this Skald instead, and then still done what I was going to do here, which is kill his swordsman through unit damage, and he's going to exhaust my Skald, but I would still be able to play Bear here. And I would have had a Frostback Bear going into the next round. And now as it sits, right, like the best I can do is he consumes soul. But see, if I still have my consume soul to play here with that dice that I spent on the Nature's Wrath, I would have been able to use that for the consume soul that I pitched instead and get 2 life back and go to 8 and prolong the game. So it's little things like that have big costly mistakes. Now I still have the ability to clear the board and have board presence. He's got 1 dice and 1 card. I don't know what that last card would be for a single Sympathy. It could be Crescendo, which would be, well, I can't play Crescendo. So, it's I think we're like, I feel like even though we're losing because of the consumed soul and the choke, like I think we can come out of the round and potentially have a chance. But he's going to guilt link me, and I should just lose a monk spirit to the guilt link if that happens. So, yeah, next round he can go ahead and like round 1, since he doesn't have a big board, but he plays Raptor Herder. That's a pretty big hit to have sort of lingering around. And this is another reason why I think I just need to have Raptor Herders in my deck, right? Like, if I was playing Raptor Herders here, like, pretty good chance I have a board that does that. So I kill the hatchling. Important to kill the hatchling here because I need to not let group tactics get turned on, and he's got a Salamander Monk and a Herder. I can't block either one of these 2 units, so I'm going to take 2 and go to 4. Again, would be at 6 if we'd have played Consume Soul. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that sort of got in my way here. And I think instead of trading damage into PB, especially this low, I had to take that Herder. But we should have probably just played Bear no matter what, right? Like, Bear would have been to 8, and then we could have taken the Herder. We'd have had another point of damage on the PB. Probably would have taken less damage overall. I just think that ultimately this was just grossly misplayed on my part, and it's going to probably end up costing me the game. Yep. So Guilt Link triggers. We lose a Salamander. And we go into round 3. 2 units to 2 units. But he was able to get 1 more point of damage in off of the Guilt Link. So we're kind of in a little bit of trouble. I like Guilt Link with Salamander Monk a lot. I think it's a great card. I like the Raptor Herder a lot. Again, I just think that those are the kinds of things you're going to have to be doing in Ashes as you move forward. The meta is shifting away from big units. I think you can still play a big unit or 2, but it's not going to be like a deck full of big units like we saw in early Ashes. Now, this particular draw is really bad. But I think we should Shared Sorrow for... well, I don't know what we get back for 1 cost in our bin. We'd have to look at the bin and see. But we can Shared Sorrow. The Crescendo does nothing in this round, and I think I end up playing Crescendo. Just trying to get like a smidgen of like board advantage. And I think it's also because he forces me to attack with a lightbringer. Yep. So because I have to attack, I think I end up using the Crescendo here because it's just a way to, and I didn't roll any nature power. Like if I had any nature power up, like I would just go ahead and ping away a unit with nature power, then attack with my Salamander Monk Spirit into something. I don't know why it's Phoenixborn. It looks like it's guarding still, but yeah, because I have to main action attack. We attack Lightbringer because I can, and then we get rid of the herder. Yeah. And again, I just so I don't want him to recur the herder, right? Like that's just a huge board advantage. So like leaving the herder up, but the Final Cry hurts, takes me down. He's got a Flash Archer in the bin from the Nature's Wrath, so there's no way to win the game now. So that is ultimately the end of the game. He's probably got multiple ways to win, but primary way to win here is through that, and then yeah, I mean the you just get down to a point in life that's too low. Like if we had 2 life back, like I'm not in Flash Archer range yet, and I don't know if I can pull the game out with this limited board pool, but you know, I mean, it's possible. I mean, Frostbite's put a lot of pressure. Molten Gold, I have 5 damage sitting on board, so I have to have a source of 3 damage, but there's the Fire Archer to win the game. So, you know, that would just be the thing. Now, I think he shows me 3 heals. You know, obviously, like, massive growth would have been big, but yeah, there's 3 heals, which is just going to be also really brutal. So, really well played from Inquisitor. I saw no major mistakes on his part. Mostly, I felt like in this game, and looking back on this game and watching it and talking to you all about it on our content here, that the mistakes actually came more from my side and play patterns than from any other way. So I'm excited to get a chance to review these kinds of things because it really teaches me everything I need to know about my play mistakes and deck styles and how to make better decks in the future. So you'll see some more stuff coming out of that, as well as some other stuff that we're working on. But this was my top cut. It's a double elimination. So I will have an elimination match coming up soon. Should be on YouTube later this week. And I hope you're enjoying the videos. Always, if you like our videos, please hit the little thumbs up button to let us know we're doing a good job. Or if you want to comment on the video, that'd be great. I'd love to hear your thoughts on maybe things I could have done differently. And of course, if you really love us, nothing says you love us more than hitting that subscribe button. So we appreciate that. But otherwise, I will be back soon with more Ashes Reborn content. Thanks so much and be good to each other. Take care.